Digimon Survive finally came out on July 29th, 2022, and now that I've finished all 5 endings, so that's Moral, Wrath, Harmony, Bad, and True, and it's now safe to discuss more things from Chapter 5 onwards, now that 2 months have passed from its release, I have my full review of Digimon Survive for y'all to hear. However, I'll still try to not give away any huge spoilers from the story, especially not many spoilers from the true ending, as I do still think that it's worth experiencing on your own for the first time without any spoilers. But just keep in mind this won't be as spoiler-free as my previous reviews, so just keep that in mind. So my overall thoughts haven't really changed much since any of my initial reviews or videos on Digimon Survive, but I do have some extra negatives which I'll mainly be touching on in this video, as I don't want to really retread on anything that I've mentioned in my previous reviews too much. All my positives are still the same. I still really enjoy this game. I still think that anyone who likes Digimon should play it, or at least give it a shot. It is a really great story, and I mainly played it because I really enjoyed the story. And it kept on giving me things that I have always wanted from Digimon, but the anime never gave. So I really loved that, and I still think that that's a really big factor in why I'm recommending this game so much, because it basically just checked all the boxes that I've ever wanted from a story in Digimon. But in any case, I do have negatives, which I'll mainly be focusing on in this video, because I didn't really go over these negatives because I didn't think of them or they weren't relevant yet. So let's dive in. So when replaying the game to get different endings, it's really handy to be able to skip through text, and it makes a lot of it go a lot faster. However, there are 2 chapters which still drag on whenever you have to replay them due to the really repetitive gameplay, and that is chapters 5 and chapters 10. So both of these chapters involve you going around to each character, interacting with them, and then fighting a battle. They're both fairly similar as they both deal with illusions, but chapter 5 is worse because in this area where you are is more or less like a labyrinth, and you keep on getting lost. And there are also so many choices to make and so much to interact with in that. But chapter 10 is pretty bad too, as you can't skip most of the text as it differs between routes. Even if it differs slightly, it means you can't skip it. So earlier on in the game, a lot is the same, no matter what's happened, except for in the true ending. So chapter 5 you can basically skip through still fairly quickly. However, with chapter 10, because it's more or less completely different in each playthrough, even if there's only a small difference, the text changes quite a bit because of something that happened earlier on. So the story splits at chapter 8, so anything after chapter 8 is considered newish, but everything before chapter 8 you can skip through really quickly because it's pretty much identical, except in the case of, I guess, the true ending, which still is fairly the same, but there are different bits of dialogue, and it gets pretty different after certain things that happen earlier on in the story. But in any case, so learning more about the world and the characters in each playthrough really makes you fall in love with the game and the characters. So these characters are not only just realistic, which is really refreshing to see. There's no like extremely exaggerated characters. They feel like real people. They have real issues that people would have, and they feel realistic. They're not exaggerated, which is what you tend to see in other stories where characters just feel like exaggerated people. These ones feel fairly realistic, and the fact that they're realistic means that they're relatable. I related to basically every character in this game at some point, and that made it an emotional journey. They're well written because they don't feel exaggerated. They feel so realistic that even though we're talking about Digimon and monsters, it still feels immersive, even though there are Digimon and monsters in it. So that's kind of nice. It's nice to have characters that I can relate to, that I enjoy reading about. And it just made me like the characters even more and more the more playthroughs I went through. Even though I did mention that it gets repetitive, I still found more ways to enjoy this game, despite repetitive gameplay in other playthroughs. But then again, maybe when you play this, you'll only play it through twice. One normal ending and then the New Game Plus true ending. But I just played through all the endings. And the bad ending is really short and is only in part 8 and it lasts for about 20 minutes extra. So you can also do the bad ending. It's kind of sad though, but it is a really quick option if you want to get an extra ending out of the way. So there is a small negative about the game, and it's how often the game kind of accidentally spoilers you on things that are upcoming. So one of these examples is in the credits of your first playthrough. The credits are always the same. You finish the game, and then it goes to credits, as you would expect. So when it's going through the credits, and this is in your first playthrough, it's in every playthrough, it's the same. There are characters who don't appear until the truthful ending that are in the credits. So it is kind of weird that these characters are named. I feel like it should just be question marks, or at least like just the voice actor's name rather than character name voice actor. It just feels a little bit weird, especially because these characters don't appear in any of the other endings except for the truthful ending. So I was sitting there waiting for these characters to appear, and then they didn't until the truthful ending. So that was kind of weird. That felt like a bit of a spoiler that the game did. I was streaming it at the time and I was like, okay, that's a spoiler, thanks game. And in a similar way, there are moments where you encounter a Digimon, and then when you go to evolve your Digimon, it reveals a future evolution. That kind of is a small minor spoiler, but I kind of wish that I didn't have those spoilers. I wish that, those characters that evolved would just stay blacked out until you reach that evolution. But no, that is not the case. It kind of reveals itself as soon as you've seen that Digimon, as in you've battled against that Digimon, or even if you're in the battle with that Digimon at the moment. And there are very specific examples for this, but I don't want to spoil too much. So there are moments where you are fighting a Digimon and then you go to evolve your Digimon and then you see that Digimon is in their evolution path. So that's kind of like a minor thing, but it's still kind of a bit weird. So it's also interesting to note that the Harmony and Wrathful endings are incredibly similar. However, the Wrathful ending has more to do with Harmony, and the Harmony ending has more to do with Wrath. They're essentially parallels of each other, and this is neither a negative or a positive, it's just something I noticed. However, I played Wrathful first and then Harmony, so after playing the Harmony ending, I was kind of worried that the other endings would all be the same, but just with a few characters changed. But I was wrong. It's only those two endings which are so similar. They have basically the same sort of flow in terms of story structure, and they have the same moments but with different characters. So they're very similar, but that's not really a bad thing. But it is interesting that, again, the Harmony route has more to do with Wrath, and then the Wrath ending has more to do with Harmony. So that was kind of something interesting that I found. And I do like the fact that they do parallel each other. They're like two sides of the same coin or what have you. So that's kind of fun. And then we've got the moral ending, which is different to the Harmony and Wrathful ending, and it feels more in line with a story you'd see from Digimon in terms of endings. Playing through the moral path in general feels like it's just a full reboot of the original Digimon Adventure anime, just with new characters. However, it's not like a bad thing or anything. It's a good reboot, and in my opinion, it's a better reboot than the Digimon Adventure : reboot that we got a few years ago. It just feels like a good reboot of Digimon, and if you are a Digimon Adventure fan and you enjoy that story, I definitely recommend you play the moral ending first, as you'll probably get something from this, because it is just like Adventure. And I do like that it is different from Harmony and Wrath, which feel fairly unique in terms of a Digimon story. Moral, and I guess to some extent truthful as well, feel more in line with a story that we'd get from the Digimon anime. So there is that. And then there's the truthful ending, which I chose to play last, which is completely different from Chapter 9 onwards. And while all the other three parts only have a few differences, the fact that this changes so much makes the game even longer. When I realized how different it was, I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I would be done with this game in like a few hours, but no, I've still got another 10 or so hours of this game. Not a negative, was really happy to be able to have more time with this game because I really, really enjoyed it. So, having said that, the truthful ending feels a lot less emotional, And other than a few key moments early on, and I guess the last few chapters, honestly, it feels like it lacks the depth and character moments that the other three endings had. A lot of the truthful ending feels fairly plot convenient, and certain moments just feel lacking in depth or emotion and these character interactions that I've just loved in this whole game. It felt like it was just missing a few moments. It was kind of weird. It was slightly disappointing, but I still enjoyed it. But compared to the other endings, it just felt like it just was less heavy. It had less stuff, less substance. The truthful ending isn't bad by any means, but it's just not something I enjoyed as much as I enjoyed the other endings. And I'm glad that I played it last. However, it does put the pieces together from the previous endings that I played, and the last chunk of chapters in the truthful ending are also fairly formulaic and more or less the same as each other. So you keep on playing these chapters that have the same structure, that have the same, like, you're doing something and then you find something and then you do something else. And that's kind of like vague because I wanted to limit the spoilers, but it just feels so much the same as all the chapters in the truthful ending. So that was something that kind of bummed me out. It felt like while in the harmony, moral, and wrath endings, they kind of had different chapters from each other, like chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12 all had a different thing going on. The same chapters in the true ending all basically felt the same as each other. They had the same formulaic, like, goals that they had. And I can't really say more because I don't want to spoil too much, but if you played the game and you played the truthful ending, you probably know what I mean when I say that they're just very much the same with those chapters. So that was something that I wasn't a big fan of. It just felt less unique than the other chapters. And yeah, compared to the other endings, it felt a bit different. Again, it's also felt still like something I would expect to see from the anime. That's not a bad thing, but it just felt different. It just felt lacking. But I still enjoyed it. It just was a little bit more disappointing, especially without those character moments that the previous playthroughs that I had. Overall, I would still recommend this game, even though I felt like the truthful path ended slightly flat in comparison to the other endings. The start of the truthful path, however, was really enjoyable, seeing how things went down with certain things different. Even the smallest thing would change something else. So also seeing these characters grow in comparison to the different endings was emotional, and I really enjoyed it. I would still recommend this game. It's just that maybe I was burnt out on it by playing all the endings. I don't think that's the case. I think the truthful ending was just slightly lacking, but only because they were putting in more information. However, the story was still really good. It's still probably one of my favorite games that I've played this year, and it's probably my favorite Digimon game of all time, and probably also, most likely, my favorite story from Digimon of all time, because it just ticked so many boxes. It had a lot of things that I have always wanted from the anime, or from any Digimon story in particular. It just had a lot of things that I've always like, oh, I really wish that this would happen, but it would never happen. And it happened in Digimon Survive, and it was done quite well. And I really enjoyed it, and I'm still going to be recommending this to people. If you're still on the fence, I would recommend watching gameplay of the game. I have all of my gameplay footage just about on this YouTube channel, so check that out if you haven't already, just to see if you're still on the fence, if you want to see certain moments or what have you, or if you only played 2 endings but you want to see how the others go. Definitely check that out, especially if you're still on the fence. If you haven't seen my other videos, check them out, especially if you do want more spoiler-free opinions on them. I kept them very spoiler-free because I didn't want to spoil anything, and now that I've played the whole game, I still don't want to spoil certain moments because of how much impact that they have. And I feel like if you see those things, you'll also have less impact when you get around to playing those yourself. So in any case, those are my thoughts on Digimon Survive. Still a great game, definitely worth the wait, definitely worth the hype. It's one of those games that I was very excited for, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. It didn't fall flat at all. Even though I wasn't a fan of the truthful ending, I still loved the other endings enough, and the truthful ending itself was still enjoyable. It just felt less than the other chapters. But in any case, those are my thoughts on Digimon Survive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or if you have any other questions about Digimon Survive, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Like this video for, I don't know, if you think the weather's nice today, or even if you don't, just like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!